Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 324, and we're talking censorship. Censorship in this Quack, but not just censorship from the point of view of how it destroys creative projects, but how it can force you to be more creative to overcome it, and it can make things more interesting and clever in ways. So, because it's not always a force for destruction; it can be a force for making things more interesting as well. So that's the angle that I want to talk about on the whole censorship thing for this Quackcast. Anyway, I'm Ozone Ocean. With me is Mr. Baines and Tan Serene. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. It's nice to. That's what I mean that.
Baines, you're up. Thank you very much for. Oh, you're up.
With us today.
Okay, well, let's talk about...
Have you ever seen the Jimmy Kimmel? I think it's Jimmy Kimmel who does the unnecessary censorship bits where he'll take a clip of a political figure or something and then just beep a random word, but it won't be a dirty word, but it's something just bleeped, and it's very funny.
Yeah, like you bleep talking,
I have also...
or something like that.
Yeah, and that is also done with pixelating random photos.
Yeah, right. There's an excellent example of censorship actually helping make something funny.
Yeah, and there's also the safe for work porn, which
never heard of that.
Yes, it's really
funny.
Some artist did this thing where he or she, I'm not sure, whatever, they drew over certain short porn scenes, and it's incredible, the effects. So this is like hardcore pornography, but it's been drawn over so much and so creatively that it's not porn anymore. So this woman is now suddenly peeling a banana and eating the banana, and you have what's going on underneath. But it's done so well that there's actually no porn in the image at all. It's just a woman with a banana.
That's hilarious.
Oh, it's very clever. So safe for work porn, I advise everyone to search for that. It's worth it, and it's safe. So before we get into that, let's just introduce the featured comic for the week. So the comic is... Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and the feature this week was Dracronon. Dragons, whether in a human form or their own natural reptilian glory, are trouble. Some are more trouble than others. Meet Tanbia, or Tan for short. She's a little pain in the bum for her brother Eden, also a dragon. These two fight like, well, brother and sis. Well, that's exactly what they are. We meet our heroes in the midst of a little tiff that ends with an entire hill falling on their heads and crushing them. Tan wakes up 1,000 years later and sees how much the whole world has changed and stayed the same. This is a heavily stylized comic with many characters, especially Tan, having really distinct and unusual faces. The colouring is rich and warm, and the whole art style is very reminiscent of Charby the Vampire in a sort of an abstract way. The story is hilarious fantasy and moves along at a very good pace. This is one of the comics that actually made me laugh out loud. I found it quite funny. It's a great little work, and there's not too many pages, so you can get in there and get into with the story and read it. Stinger 9 has done a great job on it. All the pages are coloured and drawn. This is all on the computer, so it's all digital art, digital colouring, and it looks very smooth and good. And the art is, like I say, heavily stylized, so it's not realistic stuff. This is Stinger's own particular style, which it's cute and it fits the story and the humour style very well. And I love Tan's little grumpy face. Her face is really unusual because she's a dragon in human form, but she's kept some of her dragon dragonish features as a human, especially little horns and spikes and things. Anyway, so that is Dracronon. Enjoy. Read it. Rated T. And that was our featured comic. And the featured music. Gun Wallace has given us great featured music every week. And the featured music for the week is Silly Sweetie, which was the feature the week before. Interestingly, Choir featured it. This is a dreamlike tour through clouds and wide heavenly vistas. This in turn leaves you feeling warm and fully refreshed. Enjoy Gun Wallace's theme to Silly Sweetie. Our featured music. Okay, guys. Censorship. Well,
I'm sorry, I had to start watching this safe for work porn after you mentioned it. This is incredible. Oh my god.
I haven't. Okay, now I have to go Google it myself.
The girl playing the bongos.
You have to wonder what's she doing under there. Your brain has to reconstruct all the, what's actually happening.
Yeah.
But it's very good, very entertaining.
That is amazing. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, now I've had to go and look it up and re-find it. I can't find it. Where did you find it?
Just safe for work porn in quotations. And then
Yep. That's
was the first. Yeah.
Oh, jeez, that's hilarious. Yes. I'm gonna have to definitely link to that in the notes.
Yeah.
It's even funnier than I remember. But yeah, Safer Work Porn is a great example of the creative stuff that censorship can do to something. It can force you to create very interesting, idiosyncratic, quirky things that would never have come about otherwise. So yeah, the idea that inspired me to do this was an article someone wrote in a wiki about the cartoon Reboot, which was a Canadian cartoon about what goes on inside the computer. So this, it's all computer generated, and back then it was very rare to have anything computer generated because it cost so much money. But this was a great studio, and it did it, and they thought, how are we going to do a whole series with computer-generated animation when it's, it's not really that refined. It's still in the early days of computer animation. Not that they knew, but they knew everything was rather rough. So they decided to, okay, we're going to create this whole thing around what goes on inside a computer. So that's why everything's a bit pixelated, or a bit blockier, a bit simplified, because these people are actually the working insides of a computer, the programs, the processors and all that kind of stuff. And so that's sort of an interesting idea. Back then, it was very rare to see it. Nothing else was CGI back then. This was pretty much the only thing that was, apart from Pixar movies. So that made it fairly interesting. But, then again, animations are animations, whatever. But what made it really interesting to me was the fact that it didn't do the normal things that a lot of American cartoons would be. There wasn't any shooting of characters. Violence was handled in a very creative, very non-violent way. It was quite interesting. It was just had the whole kind of feel and form that you didn't often see. And apparently the reason for that was because of the Canadian strict censorship that was going on and forced them to not have a lot of things you would normally have in cartoons. So they had to approach things in a much more creative way, a much more clever way. Like they're not allowed to shoot anyone, so they have different ways of subduing enemies rather than shooting them. Or they couldn't really show much violence in there because it was meant for kids. So they had to subdue characters in a very creative way. When they had a gun in one scene, it shot out a life raft, for example, and that would be, the character was expecting to be able to shoot this character to stop them, but a life raft pops out instead, and that's a kind of gives you an idea of the creative they had to approach the whole thing. One of the chief female characters, Dot, wasn't allowed to have boobs. She had a mono boob. Her whole chest was puffed out in a kind of mammary sort of shape, but she wasn't allowed. She couldn't be sexual. So then again, they had to show she was feminine, but they couldn't really do it in the traditional way, which made the character not overly feminine. So then again, good thing about that was that they weren't overly leveraging the typical feminine traits. They made her an interesting character without making her too overly sexual, which is often a problem with a lot of, even cartoons for kids. They make the female characters overly sexual, which is, that undermines them a bit because it differentiates them too much from the male characters, and you focus too much on the sexuality of the female character and get hung up on that rather than making them an interesting character in their own right. That's what can often happen. So, in a way, it had a slightly positive effect. I mean, it's not positive to force characters to be androgynous, but it is positive that you don't overly focus on the sexuality. So, that was interesting. But anyway, that's just an interesting example of a case where censorship can make things more interesting. So I was just going to ask you guys about any examples you can think of where censorship has made things more interesting, in that it's forced rules, external rules on a piece of creation. And
definitely, yeah.
It's done interesting things.
So I loved the Daily Show back in the Daily, and he would often be, Jon Stewart, and it wasn't just him; it was other places, but he was the first one who did it a lot. It would happen from time to time on other talk shows where they would swear, and it was bleeped in post-production before the episode was released, and Jon Stewart would do it all the time, and it was almost always funny. It actually helped. Ditto South Park. South Park would use whatever language they wanted, often super filthy, and it would always be bleeped. With South Park, it was funny because you could always tell exactly what they were saying, even with the bleep. The bleep wouldn't be very well timed, as I remember. Yeah. So you could always tell. With the Daily Show, it was more fully bleeped, but you could usually get a sense, of what he was saying. When I would see a different, like uncensored, I think one time a swear slipped through on an episode of The Daily Show and it wasn't censored. And I remember people online noticing it, and it was pretty funny. Like an F word got through and they just missed it. And it was, and I've seen him in other settings where he swears more. And then South Park, you see uncensored episodes. Not nearly as funny. I dare say, to me anyway, not funny at all. It's like the actual censorship is the joke. That's what makes it good, Just saying filthy stuff is generally not funny at all.
Because it can,
really, unless there's some other context to it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, if you bleep stuff out, your imagination has to fill in the rest, so it can become so much worse, or it can become something totally different to what they're actually censoring. Maybe the what they're actually saying, the swear word they're actually saying isn't quite as bad or whatever, but you can imagine like the worst, disgusting, most filthy thing this person's saying, and they're actually saying standard,
Yeah, that could be. Or it could also just be the fact that swearing in and of itself is not funny. Especially as the culture moves on and like it's so much more. But people's language has gotten so much more filthy.
Yeah,
uncensored. It's what's interesting about it. Nothing,
That actually brings to my mind, episodes of Fry and Laurie. This was sketch comedy by Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. Hugh Laurie from House and things like that. So this was back in the early 90s or the late 80s. And so these two fantastic actors together in their sketch comedy. And they don't swear in that series. And probably because they couldn't on, the primetime BBC kind of period when it was on. But Stephen Fry is just incredibly erudite and came up with these amazingly clever insults that are so much worse than any swearing could ever possibly be.
Like Shakespearean swear words, really.
Yes, exactly that sort of thing. Like he would say, "You are, you're sucking the excreta from Satan's rectum." Things like that, and it would go on, and that would be so much more disgusting than any four-letter word anyone could ever possibly use. So.
Blackadder does that as well. There is no actual swearing
exactly.
in the series, but it's like the insults are so insulting and very, very colorful, and they are poetic in a sense because they create imagery that stay with you far more than your standard swear word. So.
Exactly. You could just blow off a normal swear word. You think, someone calls someone a f***ing idiot, and you think, oh yeah, whatever. How many times would someone be called that? But if you called them a more creative thing, like you're disgusting imbecile with the brain of a pea, or I don't know, you half-witted moron, something like that sort of escalates it and gets more creative, then people take it more personally and take it on board more because they have to, understand what it means. It's not just a generic insult. It's something that's meant personally, and it's something they've perhaps never heard before, so it has a lot more effect.
For sure.
Exactly.
I actually can't think of one at the moment.
I'm racking against, like, this is something that Big Face would know immediately. Now, I will never recall it, so I'm going to go the roundabout way of describing it. There is this heavy metal song that is so heavily censored. But there are some verses where you hear, the only thing you hear is a beep. Like a beep, 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 beep. And it's this beeping with, all the bass and the uh, very, very quick guitar work and it was done exactly as a response to attempts to censor, I think, with the lyrics of the entire genre of heavy metal. So I don't remember who said it, what it's called, but I do recall that what stayed with me was the thrash level music with beeping throughout. You don't actually hear anything, it's just beeps and some prepositions maybe.
Right.
Beeping would change the whole actual sound of the song, because it would be so strong. Yeah. So it becomes another instrument in its own right.
Exactly. Like they have done it on purpose. Like
that, and that brings to mind, say, music from the even as far back as the 1920s. Jazz was, especially by the black people in America, was incredibly dirty. But for a radio broadcast or for when music was for radio broadcast or for going into slightly wider audiences, they had to clean lyrics up, so they used metaphor. And even though this music was about men having big dicks and all this kind of stuff and having sex and all that, and making, but the way they got around it was by the creative use of metaphor and making whoopee, for example, and which stayed with us and has actually become part of our culture and was
another season, another reason. Make a whoopee.
But it's really had such a good creative effect on the music, and it broadened the audience for it. It would have just stayed in these small music halls or that brothels and things like that the music originated in. It would never have expanded to what it did, and gone on and developed into the blues and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff. We would have missed out on a whole genre of music. And say rock and roll, I just was listening to the AC/DC Back in Black album recently, and the songs are full of creative metaphor. What's that song? You Shook Me All Night Long. I think that was one of the ones. Mm-hmm. And of course, the metaphors are obvious, but they're disguised. Give the Dog a Bone, which is a song completely about oral sex, but it's never mentioned at all. Everything is illustrated with the creative metaphor, which meant it could be played on primetime radio and increase the popularity of the band, which they wouldn't have been able to do if they were more illustrative. So, and
it also trains the audience into actually getting symbolism more and metaphors and innuendos in everything of the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that makes. Sorry. Go.
I was just going to say it forces you to think, and it forces you to become engaged in it. You listen to a pop song, rock song, whatever, on one level, and you just like the sound of it. It gets your energy up. But then you actually listen to the lyrics, and it creates a whole new level of engagement with you, and you have to think, hang on, what do they actually mean? Oh, I get it now.
And then you laugh at yourself in the train, like in that moment of getting it. That changes the entire image.
Yeah, like this whole song I've been singing and dancing to and loving my whole life is just about this guy who wants to have sex with a teenager. Well, how about that? This whole thing, this defined my whole life, and that's what it was actually about.
That reminds me, talking about songs like that. Like I was telling you before, at least after the junta, quote unquote, fell, we didn't have censorship. Before that, there was censorship for everything. So the one thing that was super censored wasn't really the lovey, touchy-feely songs, although that was also as well regulated. But it was the political commentary. Like you couldn't actually have political songs. Of course, that means that everything exploded into political innuendos that they were coded into love songs instead. So, so you had like this super love song, but it was really about bringing on some kind of revolution, depending on the context. So, and everyone was singing, besotted love songs that actually political commentary on everything. Or there were songs about, this beleaguered guy that has his mother-in-law that is harping him everywhere, but it's not actually about that. It's about the government butting into everything and things like that. And the crowning moment of all this movement was a song that is basically all ancient Greek lyrics. And there is no other coding. It's actually a song that sort of rallies you into going out to the streets and making havoc. Okay. But it's such ancient dialect that the junta didn't actually get it. It thought it was gibberish. And that was the joke, that they were such illiterate meatheads that they wouldn't actually get it, that this wasn't a song that is basically gibberish. It's actually, our own language, you idiot. And it's saying, that we should tear you down. And that became a hit during junta times. And the junta never realized that it was saying, grab your black knives and go against them and bring them down and stuff. Like everyone knew except these guys.
Wow.
So that was like that is still the joke even today. So
it's like a Trojan horse of
exactly.
Good one. That's very clever. Yeah. Yeah, you can do a lot with. You're forced to do that kind of thing, and you come up with creative solutions around it. I was trying to think of more stuff that's done that way. I mean, the sex is a really obvious one, but yeah, political stuff is interesting.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I was actually thinking. All right, that's been done for a long time in terms of metaphor and symbolism in painting. The whole visual language of Western art has been very heavily involved in that kind of thing. People often cite that ridiculous stuff about, Leonardo da Vinci and the Last Supper and, Judas is really a woman and blah, blah, blah and all this crap. But that's fake symbolism. But there's a lot of real symbolism in a lot of old paintings and things. People are holding things that say that they're wealthy, but sometimes there is political messages as well. It can show that someone has allegiances with this particular religious sect, this particular royal house, people came up, interesting ways, clever ways of indicating that, especially with the whole Reformation thing, happened and Great Britain or England back then, I suppose it was, where people had to indicate their Catholic allegiances in very clever ways. It could mean death to them if they were found to be Catholic. So, but they were stupid and they still wanted to show that they were Catholic anyway. So there was often that was sort of secretly coded in whatever they were doing.
Right.
They had this, they would have Catholic scripture hidden in very clever ways, whatever they were doing. So, yeah.
Speaking of that,
So these artists are all filthy schemers, is what you guys are saying.
yes, of course.
Horrible.
I don't know if I have said this before, I might have, but what you said made me think of this story about some Greeks that were sent to Auschwitz for vacation, of course. And so they organized an entire revolt that ended up in destroying something like one of the ovens and making it impossible to function for a while. And they did that through singing songs as they were working, hard labor. And these songs
to cover up their sabotage.
To cover up the organization, like when are we going to do this and how are we going to do this? Like, they couldn't actually talk to each other, but they were allowed to sing for rhythm and stuff like that, because I don't know what kind of hard labor it was. So they were singing supposedly very popular innocent songs, and the entire code was in there. Like, they were actually talking to each other while they were singing lyrics. So Nazis didn't get it, of course, and they revolted. They destroyed the oven and the showers, and of course they were killed to the last one. But they went out with a bang. So and they stopped the mass killings for a while, like for a few days.
Yeah. Well, I hope there's some kind of record of the songs. Probably quite interesting.
Yeah, they were by Bambakais. They are very the tunes and they were original songs. I mean, they existed, the songs.
Yeah.
But they just used the tunes to coordinate. And I'm gonna find them. They are very rebetiko style. So yeah, they were all Greeks. That's why they chose rebetiko, I guess. So and Armenians, and some Armenians went on for the ride.
All right.
Fine.
Okay, well, you look for that, and I'm trying to think of more interesting ways people have. Well, say in Drunked Up, we have our specific coding of standards on Drunked Up. So we've got like the everybody coding, teen, mature, and adult, and you can do certain things within those standards. So adult, you're free to do absolutely anything at all. The disadvantage is that people who aren't logged into the site can't see the comic. You have to be a member of the site and you have to be logged in. If a comic is mature, I think it doesn't show the thumbnail on the front page. So that, again, lowers your possible audience. But you still have freedom. Not as much freedom as you can on an adult comic, but still a lot of freedom. Now, if it's teen, there's a lot more restrictions on what you can show. Your content is limited hugely, but got a very wide audience. Then there's the final one is everyone, and then that is as available as a teen-rated comic, but it's just more, because it's got that rating, it's going to be more family-friendly. So that's all that one is. Best rating to have is teen, if you want to have your comic to be totally visible and also as free as possible. Well, not as free, but reasonably free and totally visible. You've got to have the teen rating, and you've got to work to that. I'll talk about that more in a second. But okay, so Chance has given us the link to this article about the song.
I found it in English too. It's nice. It's I don't know if it has the song. It has the category of songs, and you can Google those. They are like a ton. Not there wasn't just a single song. So
I'll add that to our links for our Quackcast notes. And that,
yeah, but it does have a video apparently.
Yeah.
So it's probably like a
Το μόνο
small
για το οποίο έφτιαξαν οι
documentary
γιατί γεννήθηκαν
for anyone who's interested.
και μερικές δεκάδες χριστιανοί.
But that was
σε
how
καροτσάκι
censorship
στάχτης.
worked for revolution.
yeah.
Yeah, incredible, actually.
Good example of how you can use creative ways to get around prying ears.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Drunk Duck comics, so Baines, what's the rating on your comic?
I believe it's mature.
Gone to mature. Okay, why did you choose to do that?
I chose to do that just in case because I wasn't totally rock solid on what was teen appropriate or teen rating appropriate on the site. So I just thought, well, if I do want to stray into more adult themes, I would be able to. And it's also sort of a sign that okay, there could be like subject matter that is adult oriented, just for whoever was perusing, just so people would be, you're not being false with people and like sort of setting them up to read stuff they don't want to or something like that.
So you're being cautious.
I guess like I don't know about cautious, just so much as yeah, I guess so. I guess cautious. Sure. Just in case. I knew that sometimes it might stray into more adult kind of things. I don't know if it really has. I don't know if I've gone outside of the teen thing at all, really. But yeah, it was kind of like just in case. I rated that,
You've worked in a bit of leeway there in case you want to go to different areas and different places.
I didn't change my comic for that at all. I do what I want, but it's sort of like for the comic I wanted to do, I thought, well, that's probably the rating that fits what I want to do.
I'm trying to find the Drunk Duck rating. It's really this damn site. Site etiquette, terms of use, privacy. Where do we have the ratings on Drunk Duck? Have you ever seen it? I'm sure there's a whole bunch
No. I don't know what does it say that I never bothered.
I think when you create a comic, maybe it comes up.
Oh yeah, you are asked to rate your own comic.
Oh yeah, but it doesn't say. But it doesn't say what those ratings. Like, what's the difference between teen and mature?
Positive. I have seen this damn thing. I think I probably wrote it. I don't know. Oh jeez.
I think in mature, like you are allowed, to have some cussing and some nudity and some violence and stuff.
Right.
Oh yeah, I know the content. I was just trying to find where it's written.
Rating. Okay. All right. So if you hover your mouse, if you go to your comics info in your control panel, and you hover your mouse over a rating, you get a little pop-up that says everything. Everyone teen, mature, adult. Teen. Content is suitable for teens or older. Mild violence, slightly mature themes, no obscenities, graphic violence, sex, or nudity. And mature says, content contains mature themes that might not be suitable for children, may contain occasional obscenities, limited graphic violence, implied sex, mild nudity, no sexually explicit material, no graphic sexual acts, no hentai, no unrelenting violence, no non-stop obscenities. And adult is all systems go, I suppose.
All systems go.
As long as the obscenities stop eventually, then you're okay.
I'm trying to find where that is, and I cannot find it.
I just told you where to find it.
Tell me again. I'm slow.
Go to the control panel for Pinky PA, where it says overview for Pinky PA.
Yep.
And then where you have the type of comic rating, hover your mouse over the word rating, and it will do the thing.
All right. Type of comic rating. I'm trying to find where that is. Type of comic.
Okay.
Oh, rating.
I'll change.
I see it.
You found it? Okay.
Yeah, it's not doing the mouse over thing for me.
Okay, so I'm changing my screen again. So common use of screen. There we go. Hello. And rating. There. You see it?
Yeah, it's working for you.
Mm. Because everything is in working order for me. Always.
Always. Well, there we are. So, yeah, the ratings on Drunk Duck, we have these particular ratings, and they restrict what you can do within these particular things. What's your ratings for, say, Without Moonlight and Brave Resistance? Mature. Oh, another person who chose too mature. I chose teen for Pinky TA. I initially had my comic being mature because I was thinking, damn, I want the freedom to be able to do what I want. I wanted, if I want to show a sex scene, I'm going to show a sex scene. I'm going to show, nudity. I'm going to show swearing. I just don't care. That's what I want to do. Those are the comics I like to read. And so that's what I want to have in my comic. But as I did more and more pages, my goals changed. I wasn't so much more interested in, just that kind of idea of being able to express however I wanted. I was more caught up in the idea of my audience. I wanted to be able to have Pinky TA seen by as many people as possible, and I didn't want to have my audience artificially restricted. That became that offended me more than the idea of not being able to say what I wanted. So, yeah, there was those two things. Whether I should be restricted creatively or whether I should have my audience artificially restricted. I thought, no, I want to have my stuff viewed by, teens. I want everyone to read it. So, what I did was I went... I'll go on.
No, you go on.
I was going to say, what I did was I went back and I changed, I added speech bubbles over some of the more, or like faded splots over the more kind of explicit kind of things like showing butts and stuff like that. I changed the swear words to other things. I was a bit more creative of what I said, or I would be a bit more old-fashioned, like saying "damn you" instead of something more explicit, or bloody hell, which is a far more socially acceptable thing than, something more rude. And that was all I had to do. And I worked out, hang on, I don't really have to show incredibly sexual things in this comic. I don't have to use that kind of language. Pinky TA can work without that. And I'll have a bigger audience. So it worked for me to do that. And I found that actually trying to stay within a teen rating, I'm not sure I always have with Pinky TA. I still try, but it actually forced me to be a bit more clever with how I approach things. And it didn't become a restriction at all. It didn't feel like a restriction. Didn't feel like I was forced not to do certain things. And if I ever did do something more sexual with Pinky TA, then it would be an extra special thing and wouldn't be part of the comic and would be more interesting because of that. Because people would sort of click to look at it and actually see, oh, what's this thing?
Yeah, it gets money for it.
Yeah.
Exactly, everyone who also mature. You don't know. But yeah, so that was my reasoning for going for the teen rating.
That makes sense.
It does.
But with mature,
I went mature, although I knew I wasn't going to have too many scenes that were, explicit, either violently or sexually. Like, a lot of my comic is people bouncing off each other in a non-sexual way. So I suppose that theoretically, I mean, I could go for tea by just sanitizing it more than I already have. But I didn't want to do that for two reasons. First of all, I think that the level of violence, the violence that exists in the comic is far more subtle and it's not really in the panels. So I don't want kids exposed to that level of violence, considering that these are things that actually happened in reality, not in the context of the story, but they were things that were happening. Okay, I don't want kids to be exposed to this before they are mature things, let's say, like or young adults. That's one thing. The other thing is I didn't want to make the villains more sanitized than they already are, and they are. Because if I let them to be as they actually were, it would have to be adult, and everyone would come to my comic for sex, and they wouldn't get any. So that would be a false advertisement. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with a title like Without Moonlight. If it has a rating of adult.
It does sound a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sultry.
People would be extremely disappointed. So I couldn't do that. And I didn't actually want to do that because I don't want to draw things like that. So mature is basically to actually do restrict my audience into not getting into the story before they can think about what they are reading and be able to handle it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Because that, and then the small bouts of action and violence or sex that are there are also traumatic. So, yeah, I want people to be safely ready to look at these things and not, get the wrong idea. Because a young mind, young people, teenagers, theoretically can handle it in the sense that, okay, it's nothing happened, but it does things to their psyche. And I don't want me to be the agent of that. So, mature.
People.
Well said.
Yeah. I have a lot of, I had, and I now have other charges that are young kids and they want to, and they know that I do comics and they want to read them, and I never give them the link.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, fair enough. That makes a lot of sense. The other comic is the Bottomless Waitress one. It's on a hiatus at the moment, but that is mature rating. And with a title like Bottomless Waitress, it would be quite happy as an A-rated comic, but it's not. It's mature because we wanted to give it more audience and, not restrict people. But the way we have done it is a tease comic, which means we have to be creative in how we show the sexuality, the nudity. Well, there's no nudity. Well, not really, because it's very cleverly hidden, and that's the whole point of that kind of genre of work, because it's all designed around creative and clever ways of hiding nudity and hiding creative ways of showing adult situations without them being adults.
Yeah.
So that teases the audience in such a way that they'll keep on reading in the hopes of seeing something that will never ever be shown.
Don't tell them it'll never be shown. You're ruining their hopes.
Well, the rating shows it anyway. I mean, there's a possibility that some more things can be shown because M rating does allow for some nudity.
That's right. And if you visit our Patreon, we don't have a Patreon.
M rating does allow for some nudity, so there is a possibility, but it's never going to be a full.
You give us $1,000 a month, you can see whatever you want to see.
Precisely. We'll draw in the
as long as Oz wants to draw it. Yeah.
But yeah, so that is an example of, this comic is basically drawn for the rating. Because if there wasn't a rating in place, if there wasn't any restriction in place, then there wouldn't be any need to do that kind of thing. But because that exists and we're drawing to it, that means, we've got aprons in front of like people's naughty bits and all this kind of thing, and, just posing to the side and hiding behind things, which makes a very interesting premise. But we're not alone in that. There's genres of film and animation that are built around that whole thing as well. Teasing stuff. Carry-on films in Britain, which are very silly, but have a lot.
The interest was in Powers, that he's naked and he's dancing through, and
exactly.
There's all this
hiding certain body parts, which is based on the Carry-On films and from Britain, which were popular in the 60s and the 70s, where people's naughty bits were hidden, and a lady might be carrying... there's a whole movie set in a nudist camp where you see, no nudity because people might be carrying a pair of watermelons. And another character says, "Oh, you've got a fine pair of melons, miss," and she'll turn around and she's holding a couple of melons in front of her, and she says, "Oh, thank you." Stuff like that. And
that's why the British are heralded as such geniuses. And they're so sophisticated.
Subtlety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact that censorship exists forces people to be creative and do things that would never have been created at all if that hadn't existed. Not that the
so as an artist, is that more interesting as an artist to do that extra? You have to figure out how to draw it and how to hide it.
It is.
Is that more? Yeah.
Creatively, you have to work a lot harder.
Yeah.
So that is quite interesting. I mean, Tance, you had a sex scene in Without Moonlight.
Yeah, I did.
You are obviously not someone who does, hardcore porn. So you...
Well, not that she... Yeah.
Not
that she tells us... Not that she gives us the links
for it. I don't have the anatomy skills for that anyway, I mean.
Exactly, exactly. But so in Without Moonlight, you approached that in a very creative way, and you had to think a lot about that because you had to show this scene, but you had to plan and think, how am I going to show it? How am I going to express what's going on and what's intended without actually showing anything?
So. I wanted, I didn't want to leave too many things to imagination. Because that was the point. The point wasn't just to gratuitously show a sex scene. Everyone knows how that's done. The idea was to show the particular context and what that says for the characters involved and everything. So I had to show what was being done without actually showing what was being done. So that the only problem with this, I mean, this was fascinating. I loved trying out different angles and stuff. And yes, I did try different angles. The only traumatic thing was actually Googling the anatomy. that was terrible. I saw far worse things there than what I actually had in mind. Oh my God, what are they doing? Oh my God. And ever since I have never turned off Google Safe Search. Ever.
Oh no. So, yes, it has scarred you for life. But it forced you to create something that was rather individual.
Yes, actually Harry Potter helped a lot for this. Because there is this, what was I think the third movie or the fourth, I don't remember, where the following titles have this map with footsteps going all around. So there is this Easter egg where at the corner you have two pairs of footsteps placed in a way where you actually know there is no way that these two students are not having sex. So, so I thought, okay, I will work with the legs, and that's how I finally managed to draw this thing.
Very clever.
Yeah.
Actually, what you're saying about Harry Potter, that reminds me, in a slightly different direction, say Indian film. Indian films have always had heavy censorship. They can't even show people kissing. So they have to have clever ways around that. And that evolved into the whole Bollywood genre of films where we have lots of pictures of flowers, we have to have dance scenes, you have to do that. And they have to say certain things often in their songs, and there has to be, certain kinds of dance scenes. And that's all to make up for the fact that they can't show physical intimacy in these certain kinds of films. So, but the audience isn't left thinking, oh, I wish there had been a scene of physical intimacy here. The audience has now come to expect those great musical scenes and those scenes of flowers and those things, and they understand what they mean. They're totally clued into, the extra meaning and the metaphor and stuff like that. But if the film actually did show kissing, or two people having sex, then they'd be disappointed because it wouldn't show those things they expect to see. They go to the films to see the dance scenes, the amazing dance scenes in these films,
yes.
Singing, and the shots of flowers or whatever, train going into a tunnel. I don't know.
Yeah,
champagne.
That's
corks
a great comedic. It can be comedic gold in the sense that I don't remember where I probably have seen it a lot, where you have this champagne cork going off and stuff to signify a man's reaction to seeing a woman or something, and that is amazing. I mean, that always makes me chuckle when it's of course done with proper editing and stuff. So, but things like that, or
it enhances the work. Then it doesn't cripple it anymore. It makes it even funnier, and because what you were saying before about leaving things to the imagination, now that has expanded what you can do, because you can do a lot. You can, if you make people think about things, they can think about way wilder things than you're ever going to show on screen. So it makes them do a bit of work, forces them to engage a bit more, and makes it more rewarding. So,
exactly.
It's a good thing.
And in a sense, you can project your own, I wouldn't say experience, but your own expectations or wants. So it's a more intimate experience. Than actually being shown something else.
Then, doesn't it? Far more personalised. We haven't got much time to go, but we should mention the Japanese thing as well, say with anime. So they have heavy restrictions on anime with what they can show.
But they're weird ones though.
Yeah, weird ones. So their hardcore anime is called hentai, and there's all different kinds of variations of that. But hentai mainly is like the main term, and they can show specific things in that, and they can't show other things. So like they have to censor like the act of penetration. They have to censor like the.
Is that weird?
But only if it is by a male member.
Yes. So they could show a banana or something like this.
A tentacle.
Yeah, that's
how
apparently why tentacle porn came in, because they can show that, but they can't show erect penises. And there's this restriction on showing the erect penis is very specific, so it's only the end. So they have these little tiny parts that censor part of a penis. So it's very weird. They can't show pubic hair on a woman, so
no pubic hair.
Yeah, so they can have the censor bar above a vagina, and they can show the rest of the. So it's quite strange, but that has also.
Wait.
I'll go on.
Can they show everything else? It's just the pubic hair that's the problem.
Yeah, it depends, but yeah, pretty much it's the pubic hair is the problem. So
That's fine.
it's a weird thing, but that spawned the other genre called ecchi anime. So this is anime that's very much like Bottomless Waitress in that it's all around the T's. So this can be shown in prime time, and all they have to censor there is they can't show genitals or nipples. So characters can be fully nude as long as they have no nipples and no genitals, which they often do. So they're smooth all around like Barbie dolls, which that's a very interesting. That
explains a lot. That explains a lot.
Sailor Moon and all that kind of stuff. So that's an interesting way of getting around it, and they have other different interesting ways of getting around it too. They have light flares. Suddenly you'll have a bizarre light flare that just happens to go over someone's area, or you'll often have scenes done in steam rooms because steam is always creatively used to hide certain bits, and dark shadows as well. So if a character, say, falls down and you'd be able to see their underpants or something like that, they have a mysteriously very, very dark shadow between their legs. But the reason why they do those approaches with the dark shadow, with the steam, with the light flare is because that's very easy to remove. So when they release the DVD versions, suddenly all those things are lessened, and those things are a bit more visible. They don't show genitalia perhaps, but they show like the underpants that they were hiding before, or they might be able to show the nipples on the DVD release because it's still wide release, but it's not in like primetime TV. So they
no DVD or no censor.
Okay. No, I was like listening to you. I'm thinking about different mangas that I read when I was starved from Kenshin, and I was looking for.
You're looking for text.
Yeah, and I remember like I got this medical drama sort of manga, and it had medical drama in it, but it also had all these nurses that their skirts were always getting blown up, and I mean I saw more butts than anything in the noir. Anyway, and I couldn't get it why they were doing this. So what I was going to ask is, does this ecchi thing also translate into manga? Do they do that, or is it just for movies? Because that would explain what they were doing. I mean, but I remember being so bewildered. Like, why is she doing the split as she's waltzing to go get, operation utensils? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this?
Yes, that's precisely it. Yeah, they have to like just crowbar in some standard kind of lascivious sort of.
And everything is like super sexy. Like nothing covers anything ever, except the face masks. The face masks will work.
Oh, precisely, yeah. And there's different levels of it too. Some comics will be more explicit, and some will be slightly less. maybe they'll show nipples, maybe they won't show, maybe that will be covered in one comic, They have different levels of what they'll show. It's very interesting how people will be creative in what they'll show and what they won't. So yeah. This
Really.
has been Quackcast, 324? The censorship Quackcast. How censorship can actually be a force for creation.
Creative. Yeah.
Creative inspiration. So go forth and censor. Put black bars on your parts. I'm wearing my black bars right now. It's it's uncomfortable, but I'm slowly getting used to it. I've stopped swearing. I have a beeper instead. I'm using creative swear words. That's why we cut out Pitface actually from this Quackcast. She was just too dirty. She was,
She would just be a continuous beep. So
destroy the entire Quackcast. She'd be beeping over the top of everything.
Yeah, she's always all over.
There we go. I'll have to call this the Beepcast.
There you go.
There we are.
The Bleepingcast. It's like a...
The bleeping
So
cat.
how does the suffix, how the suffix being here?
The Bleepingcast. There we are, with an exclamation mark. Awesome. Thank you guys for being part of my weird idea and humouring me.
It was fun.
You too.
Yes.
You very much.
And on that note, we shall say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ta-ta.